Hey guys, I know a lot of us have a very special place in our hearts for the SKAVEN. Certainly long past their heyday, however, they were really at their best in Warhammer 2 and have been a little bit neglected here lately by the by Creative Assembly and Warhammer 3. Although they're still quite a bit of fun, I still hold out that the SKAVEN are the best example of variety within a single faction. Just the difference between the types of mechanics that were introduced between all of your different legendary lords here, I think it's most pronounced when it comes to the Skaven. So, you know, an Eshin campaign is going to play out completely differently than a Molder campaign is going to play out completely differently than, let's say, let's go with Clan Scryer in the weapon teams, for example. So, anyway, on that note, having just mentioned how much I always enjoy the Skaven, and I know that a lot of other people like them as well, I do want to go ahead and give a shout out to Poo Dispenser 5492. Now, a few of you in recent times have mentioned to me that I need to check out some of the SCM team's mods, and I'm going to go ahead and give this comment credit for being the most recent one to finally motivate me to do so, but consider this a shout out to all of you who have mentioned that team's mods prior to this. And the interesting thing, of course, is this was in the context of the Immortal Empires Expanded video that I did a few days ago. And actually, this is calling attention to the one that adds the additional 16 legendary lords for Immortal Empires Expanded. And believe me, I'm going to be talking about that mod and probably playing a few campaigns with a couple of those different guys. But what ended up happening here was I dipped into the SCM team, into that particular mod, and then I dipped into all of their different mods. And the one that jumped out at me as something a little bit different that I wanted to try out right away was this one right here. This is SCM SKAVEN Clans. This is, of course, updated for 6.3, and I'm not going to read through all of this. I will, of course, leave a link in the description of this mod for you to check it out for yourself. But yeah, for people who really like the theme, which, of course, I'm big into theme and immersion, there's just really a lot to like about this. So I'm pretty excited to recommend this particular mod to people if you like SKAVEN and if you care about theme, because there's just lots and lots of additional information. I learned a lot reading through this. It makes all of these different minor factions playable. So let's talk about that for a second. Now, I do want to say there have been other mods that have done really good job updating the SKAVEN as well. I really like what SFO has done with the technology tree, for example, and that's almost certainly not going to be compatible with this. I certainly didn't try to do it for this campaign. But since I care so much about theme and all of a sudden, of course, also I should just flat out admit that my favorite SKAVEN legendary lord has always been Skrulk, this cute little fella right here. And he's, of course, been more neglected than anyone else when it comes to Creative Assembly and the SKAVEN lords. So for that reason, I was just really drawn to the whole Clan Pestilence and all of the different additional theme related Clan Pestilence that this SCM team has added. But as you can see right here, we've got not only your main 6 legendary lords, but now we start looking at all of these additional ones that get added in. And I probably will be trying some of these others. Who knows, maybe I'll end up doing something on the channel related to a playthrough with one of these others. As I've mentioned before, I like the idea of Rags to Riches, where you're starting out as just a minor faction and you have to work your way all the way up to being one of the great factions, you know, starting from almost nothing. But I didn't do that in this particular case because, as I've mentioned already, I really like Skrulk so much, and his campaign is just kind of lacking a little something when you're playing it in vanilla. So this was an opportunity for me to see what all this team has decided to do for Skrulk. So we're going to get into that in a lot more detail moving forward, and I'm going to show you how this campaign played out, at least through the early game. I decided that for early game for Skrulk, because he starts out in such a difficult position against so many different enemies, particularly the lizard men. Of course, he's got the dwarfs right there as well. These are enemies that can really give Skrulk a hard time. For me, I think a good transition from early game to mid game would be once he overcomes all of the challenges that he's got, of course, with a Gorok just to his north, and of course to Hinowin down to his south. He's got the dwarfs here, the Spinosotek dwarfs in the mountains here, right next to him. He's got a minor Lizardman faction just to his southeast that he actually starts out at war with, called the Southern Sentinels. And then the way this campaign usually plays out is it's not often very long before you end up getting into trouble with Rakarth, who tends to move across into southern Lustria as well. And sometimes also Luther Harkon can get involved. Obviously now you've got Skulltaker, excuse me, learn how to talk here, Michael. Skulltaker to the north as well, and then you've got the Bretonnians, and anyway, you got Marcus will fight. You've got all kinds of potential trouble that can brew in Lustria. But for me, I thought maybe the good transition point between early game and mid game would be once we have taken care of the immediate problems with our lizardmen neighbors, who I've never ever played a Skrull campaign where you're not at war with all of those, usually pretty early on. And like I said, it is a very challenging campaign. So that's, to me, that once you overcome that initial challenge, usually the Skrull campaign does calm down a little bit, although it can stay quite interesting moving forward from that point. All right, anyway, with that as a setup, I'm just going to allude to this campaign did not play out the way that I expected it to at all. And and I loved it. But it does end up becoming quite embarrassing, which I will get into here in just a couple of minutes. All right, and here at the very beginning, I do want to mention some of the other mods that I'm using here that I think go very well with the SCM SKAVEN mod. I think if you're doing something like this, where you want a long, challenging campaign, I think that plays very well into some of the mods that I generally use on this channel anyway. So I do recommend using the Brogus Harsh Dynamic Movement Range, which does reduce your campaign movement noticeably, but not so much. It's not quite as crippling as it can be if you use the minus 50% movement. I, of course, recommend slower expansion and settlement supply lines. This is one of my favorite mods in the game for eliminating the ability to steamroll, and it impacts both the player and the AI, so you do wind up seeing overall a lot less of the just constant onslaught of one settlement falls after another, but rather a little bit of expand, take a minute to breathe, let things stabilize a little bit, and before you can expand again. I'm using Cho's Improved Garrisons, which adds to that by making it more difficult to take settlements, and in particular your walled cities. And of course, I'm using more Sensical Public Order, which does do a couple things. It makes public order at every level much more meaningful. It no longer is just a mechanic where it's only even noticeable when it gets to minus 100, but rather there are significant penalties to going down lower in your public order, and also some benefits to maintaining a high public order, which I like, and it also eliminates the self-correcting mechanism that vanilla public order has. And then the other one that I will go ahead and mention is the research rate. I have slowed that down to 50%. So that's really just a way that if you like these slower campaigns, the ones that are more challenging for a longer period of time, that are more realistic, well, you want your research to take longer as well, just so that it's kind of paced evenly with everything else that's happening in the campaign. Okay, so here we are at the beginning of just your typical Skrulk campaign. As you can see, we've got Skrulk right here, and we've got Slicin right here, we've got Oixel right here, and we've got our enemy right here. But wait just a minute now, this looks a little bit different. This is literally turn one as soon as the game has begun, and for some reason we already have blue over here. So why is that? Well, as you can see right here, we actually start out the game with lots of additional factions encountered here. Most of these are the other SKAVEN clans. Again, not introduced by the mod itself, but made playable by the mod. But anyway, this is now establishing a relationship from the very beginning of the campaign between Lord Skrulk and some of these other SKAVEN factions. And in particular, let's go right here to our military alliance negotiated. We've got this military alliance with bubonic court, and for some reason it's listed twice. I'm not exactly sure why that is, but anyway, it's fine. That explains why there is the blue ally symbol up here on our mini map. So these guys over here, unlike in the normal vanilla game where you can establish relations with the SKAVEN faction, you can generally like get a trade agreement going with them, I think, pretty quickly. In this particular version, you already have a military alliance with them. But not only that, we have a vassal. So this is what I mean by Lord Skrulk is actually King Skrulk here. This is, you're much more of the leader of a whole series of SKAVEN factions in this campaign. We've got a vassal here. This is Clan Fisic over here. Who knows how long they'll last, but in any case, they are currently our vassal. So if we pull up our diplomacy screen, as you can see here, this is kind of the summary of what I was just saying. We've got relations already with all of these different SKAVEN factions. We've already got Clan Fisic here as a vassal, and we've already got bubonic court right here as a military ally. So kind of interesting. It's going to change the dynamic at the beginning of that campaign, although again, as minor factions, we'll kind of see how the campaign progresses to see how this holds up, how long they're still around. But I like the idea of Lord Skrulk not being like, all on his own. Nobody really knows much about him, and you're starting from zero in terms of your relations with all the other SKAVEN factions. That's not the case all of a sudden. Now, the other thing I want to go ahead and talk about here is let's start by looking at his army. This looks kind of normal until you start to realize, oh, wait a minute now, these are not clan rats. These are rotten rodents. So we do have our plague monks that Skrulk always starts out with. We've got a couple of pus bags, which look a lot like, I'm not sure if they're SKAVEN slave slingers, or I can't remember if they might be Night Runner slingers that Lord Skrulk normally starts out with. But anyway, they've been now replaced with these pus bag slingers. And we've got these rotten rodents here with dual weapons. Well, what on earth is that all about? We do also have the Plague Claw catapults as well. Well, let's go ahead and pull up the building browser here. And some of your buildings look pretty normal here. This is your assassin building. This is what's giving you the gutter runners, the night runners, the assassin down here, and the Eshin sorcerer here. You've got the weapons teams building. That also looks the same. Excuse me. You've got your artillery building. This looks pretty much the same as well. But then you've got a couple of interesting, and also the monster building is the same, but you've got two different military recruitment buildings that are quite a bit different than what you would be used to. You've got this one right here. This is the main barracks building, and you can already see there's a bunch of additional units here. So you've got your rotten rodents right here. The SKAVEN slaves, by the way, have been replaced with pus bags. So my guess is the starting army for Lord Skrulk in vanilla, these are probably SKAVEN slave slingers. They're probably not Night Runner slingers. I just wasn't positive about that. But anyway, going back to this, your SKAVEN slaves do continue to be recruited from your capital, except in this case, they're not SKAVEN slaves anymore. They are now your pus bags, and there are 3 different flavors of them. But then you've got your military barracks building here. So instead of your basic clan rats, you've now got these rotten rodents. The next step up here, you've got rotten rodents with dual weapons. These are what Skrulk starts with. You've got your rotten rodents with scythes, and you've got your pit fighters, blade and shield. And then you've got a festering chanter here. This is a new hero type. And then up here at the 3rd tier, this is normally where your storm vermin would be. Instead, you've got pit vermin, You've got your Plague Rodent's blade and mace. You've got Plague Rodent's blade and shield. You've got Plague Rodents with a halberd and your stinking thing right here. And then finally, this other military building right here, which of course very unique for Clan Pestilence. Well, I shouldn't say unique, but you know, very thematic for Clan Pestilence here. This is the Pox Cauldron building. You've got your Plague Monks just like before. You've got your Plague Priests just like before, but then you've got Plague Monks with staff and blade. You've got Plague Monks dual blade and bale chime. You've got Plague Monks with spears, and you've got Plague Monks blade and shield. Next tier up, you've got Plague Monk Censer Bears right there. That's normal, and your Pestilence Guard. This is dual axe. And then finally, the top tier. This is your Blessed Ones of the World Below. This is a Great Axe infantry unit. Very interesting right there. You've got Plague Zealots with great swords, and you've got Plague Monk Censer Bears, which again, that's your normal that vanilla provides. Okay, so there you go. You've got some really interesting diversity here from the very beginning with a Clan Skrulk campaign. Clan Pestilence campaign with Lord Skrulk. I really like the idea of him being kind of the leader of a couple of multifaceted SKAVEN factions here in Lustria. But you know what? We're going to see whether or not it makes this campaign play out any different, because of course Lord Skrulk does have some challenges being surrounded by lizardmen and dwarfs, and eventually Rakarth will probably work his way over here as well and declare war. So you know, all kinds of dangers here for Lord Skrulk in Lustria. All right, another thing that you will notice up here is that we do have 50 infections. This obviously will remind you of Nurgle, who uses the infections mechanic to create plagues. And we, in fact, have down here a plagues button a la Nurgle. Now, it's not unlocked yet, so we'll have to hold off on that for the moment, but you can already see where this is going. And then one other thing that you may take note of is not only do you start with the engage the enemy mission objective here, but you've also got this one right here, this Exalted Imperator of Clan Gangris. And then we'll go ahead and start out. Lord Skrulk is going to begin this campaign, the building of his legend. He's already a minor legend, let's say, in the annals of SKAVEN lore, but we're going to make him a major legend. So he's going to take that first step here with this war against the Southern Sentinels. And just taking a look at some of these units. These are, of course, the Plague Monks, so these are going to be just like normal in vanilla, but let's take a look here at our Rotten Rodents. These are dual weapons. We've got the 4 units of those, and then we have these pus bag slingers back here. So let's just really quickly take a look at these guys and check them out. You can see dual wielding swords. So yeah, could be kind of interesting. They strike me as just like the Plague Monks. They're probably a little bit more fragile, but do extra damage. And then of course right back here we've got our pus bag slingers. Look probably very similar to SKAVEN Slave Slingers, but that's more or less what you would expect. If the battlefield map here looks different than what you're used to, it is because we are using some of the modded battlefield maps. Getting tired of the same old from vanilla. So here you can see from winning a battle, we end up having incubate captives, we have captives, and we have sell off. This is obviously a little bit different because we're going to get some infections out of this. Alternatively, we could go with the army replenishment and the boost to casualty replenishment rate, or just the treasury. But in this case, I'm going to take these infections. 59, not too shabby. And Skrulk is, of course, not satisfied with a single victory, and go ahead and launch an attack against the Lizardmen settlement, the Sentinel of Time. And winning a fairly easy battle here, we're just going to go ahead and I think we'll occupy this settlement at just at tier 1. We also do have, of course, the founding settlement debuff here that happens, which does mean we don't want to willingly conquer a new city and then turn around and give it back up again, because it is so punishing every time we do expand by even a single settlement. So you can already see our massive public order debuff that we're taking here. I'd rather not go through this all over again by losing the Sentinel of Time and having to retake it, but you get what I'm saying. Still not worth investing a whole lot of resources into things that you're not sure whether or not you're going to be able to hold on to. So anyway, the aforementioned slower expansion mod is definitely going to do exactly what it says, which is slow our expansion. But what we have done at this point is we have now recorded our first series of victories. Our reputation has been boosted, and we're just going to go ahead and lean into the whole, okay, everybody wants to side with a winner, and since we look like a winner right now, we're going to go ahead and strike while the iron is hot and start maybe getting ourselves some trade agreements going with some of these other factions. So let's just take them kind of in order here as we could do non-aggression pacts with them. So in other words, Clan Scrat here is going to be interested in a non-aggression pact, as I mentioned. You know, everybody wants to side with a winner. So we'll go ahead and take that. We'll go ahead, why not? We'll go ahead and take the trade agreement and the military access as well, since they are so close to us. And we'll get out of that 3,000. So you can already see where this is going. I don't want to do a military alliance with them at this point, but you can see that all of a sudden now our legend has already grown to the point where people are throwing money at us in order to be our friend, and we do want to do that while we've got some momentum here after coming off of our first victory. So we're going to come out of this looking already like a respected leader of the SKAVEN, if such a thing is in fact possible. But yeah, we're getting a decent amount of money out of this, and of course we're also getting trade agreements out of it, which is going to, you know, for as long as these other minor factions are even around, which probably won't be all that long, but we will be getting a little bit of extra money out of them. However, I'm going to draw the line here. I'm not going to side with the Nurglings here at the very beginning. So let's just go ahead. Again, we could even get some military like defensive alliances with some of these guys, but I'm not going to do that. We've already kind of gotten their friendship at this point. We've kind of gotten some money out of them. We've built up our nest egg here all the way up to 16,000. So obviously at this point we're much better situated for the troubles that lie ahead in a Lord Scroll campaign. So let's just see how that works out for us. And even though our temporary debuff because of the slower expansion mod has worn off, it is obvious at this point that we're going to have constant struggles with public order, which is fine. We'll end up having to leave an army probably almost permanently up here to garrison Oixel. So I've gone ahead and sent one of our little rat lords up this way to do exactly that, continue to do some recruiting while we try to lay a trap down here for the lizard men and wait patiently for the trap to be sprung. All right, so we can see at this point that our vassal already is causing a little bit of trouble to the Southern Sentinels. He's got an army down here. Now, the interesting thing is he's in ambush stance, and this is a little bit of a bug. I don't know if it's a mod-related bug or just a vanilla game engine bug, but yeah, I can't actually click on this army and see what's in it, nor can I see that he's in ambush stance. I just know that he is. A little bit weird, not anything game breaking, but my point is that our vassal is already starting to threaten the Southern Sentinels, which works to our advantage. He actually successfully then does ambush that Southern Sentinels army, which sort of defangs those lizard men for the time being, which is good for us because we are starting to suffer from further rebellions here, so we need a little bit of time in order to deal with that. He is going ahead and encircling Mangrove Coast down there. I am currently raiding the Southern Sentinels, and as you can see, it's not something I'm going to be able to easily take because we're using Chosen Proved Garrisons, and that is too tough of a garrison for us to be able to do anything about. for now. So instead, I'm just going to be raiding them for the time being while I have to spend most of my military strength up here in the north taking care of the rebellion. And of course, unfortunately, because we're using the more sensical public order mod, just because you defeat a rebellion does not mean that you can expect to start immediately recovering your public order. It doesn't work that way anymore. You kind of have to actually commit the resources to doing something to improve your public order. We've taken away the self-correcting mechanism. So it just means that we're going to be dealing with rebellions in Oixol for much of this campaign. Now here's where the campaign really starts to turn, and this can sometimes happen when you play Skrulk. We end up having Cult of Sotek, this is of course Tehinawin, declaring war on us. We end up having Itza, which is Gorak, declare war on us as well, just one turn later. So this is a worst case scenario for Skrulk, where you end up having to fight both of your major lizardmen neighboring factions, both of whom tend to be stronger than you are in the early game. Fighting them both at the same time is really, really problematic. It's much better if you can either get lucky and have a few turns to deal with one of them before you have to deal with the other, or alternatively, somehow manipulate the AI through diplomacy or whatever to buy yourself a little bit of extra time. Well, that just didn't work out in this campaign, so here I am in worst case scenario, but it's something to be expected when you play a Skrull campaign, so we'll just deal with it as best we can. Now, I actually get a little bit lucky here where I do manage to set up in preparation for Gorak to come down and attack us by laying an ambush for him, and it does work. Getting that first major victory against Gorak is huge, and at this point I thought, okay, now I'm in pretty good shape. Now, I don't exactly want to say it's smooth sailing, but that's a really major hurdle to overcome. So the legend of Lord Skrulk is still ascending at this point, as it looks like he has won a major victory, and these let's just say the tides of fortune are unstoppable now for Lord Skrulk. Well, let's just go ahead and say it doesn't exactly work out that way. Since I'm already in the process of having to fight two major Lizardmen factions, what I do decide to do when the Southern Sentinels offer it, I do decide to go ahead and peace out with them. We'll take a little bit of money from them. I don't love doing that. You don't really want to give them time to rebuild their armies because, yeah, they will come back against you at some point in the very near future. But, you know, it's not great to have to fight two Lizardmen factions at the same time, let alone three. So I at least get a little bit of money and buy myself a little bit of time. Just kind of secure one of my fronts by making temporary peace with the Southern Sentinels. Now finally, we've gotten enough infections that we've unlocked the plague mechanics. So let's go ahead and talk about this, because this is of course one of the major things that this mod does, is it does give Skrulk the plague mechanic very much like what Nurgle has. There is one major difference, which is one of the symptoms here it's been changed pretty dramatically to be really very much tailored for the SKAVEN, for Lord Skrulk. So that's kind of a nice little touch. Now, one thing I do want to make clear is the tooltip is a little bit misleading when you hover over some of the plague descriptions. It says the effects on Nurgle armies and settlements. Whenever you see that, you should know that it also is affecting Clan Pestilence armies and settlements as well. So these symptoms are actually beneficial for Skrulk as opposed to being detrimental like it is for normally all non-Nurgle armies and settlements. And what I found out in the course of playing the campaign is that you do have infections available to you in sufficient quantities that you can pretty regularly consistently keep reapplying plagues throughout the campaign. Now, having defeated Itza, I thought, okay, this gives me an opportunity to maybe focus on Tahinowin, and we kind of need to because he's already come up here and now taken Chupayodel from our vassal, thus eliminating our vassal. Clan Fisik no longer exists in this campaign, alas. And at the same time that he's done that here to the east of us, he's also coming up from the south and getting ready to invade our territory. So what we need to do is we need to set up another clever ambush and hope to be able to take out one of these armies of Sotek, before the two of them kind of join forces and try to attack us together. So I have to fall back and kind of trade territory for time here. And you find yourself having to do that in a Skrulk campaign quite frequently. It's fine. I do bring Skrulk down, and it's very nice to have these jungles. We do usually end up with quite high ambush percentage chances. I actually set up ambushes in both the south on the, let's call it the Tahinowin front, and in the north on the Itza front, just in case Gorok does decide to come back down again. However, he does get a little bit distracted because here comes Skulltaker, and that's very good for us if all of a sudden Gorok starts to get involved with more enemies, which is in fact what does end up happening in this campaign. But anyway, so back to Tahinowin. Not Tahinowin himself, but one of his smaller armies does come up and try to attack us. We do successfully catch him in an ambush. And as he retreats, you don't want to miss this opportunity to wipe him out, but here comes Tahinowin himself. Uh-oh, this is not great. This was kind of unexpected. I did end up winning the one ambush battle, but now I find myself having to fight a second battle. But it's okay. He's actually, even though, auto-resolve, which very much does not go in the SKAVEN's favor, which we'll show another example of here in a second. Auto-resolve thinks we're going to lose this battle. Well, I feel like we can win it. We have the strength of numbers. Those chameleon skinks are okay units, but you get them locked down in melee. They'll shred you if you let them just stand back and do damage to you with their missiles. But if you catch them in melee, then they're not that bad, and we've got enough units that we should be able to do it. So that's exactly what we decide to do here. Clever old Skrulk figures out the weakness of the enemy here. We use the numbers to our advantage. It's a typical ugly SKAVEN fight, but we overwhelm them with neighbors. Just make sure we lock everything up in melee instead of letting them fire their missiles at us. And ultimately, after an extremely long time, we're able to wear them down enough to get the victory out of it. Got to win those victories in the early going whenever you can against the Lizardmen, because if you wait too much longer, they start bringing more and more dinosaurs into the fight, and the SKAVEN really struggle against those dinosaurs, particularly now with Clan Pestilence, because we don't have easy access to clan rats with spears or clan rats with spears and shields. So yeah, that's going to make things a little bit more challenging. We do have clan rats with scythes, which are anti-large, but I don't end up getting very many of them in the early part of this campaign. And it's just yet one more thing that works against us when we're fighting against the much, much stronger Lizardmen factions. But every time we win a little victory like this, we do weaken our enemy. We get a little bit of loot and experience out of it. And usually, as much as possible, you want to follow up by pursuing them, running them down, wiping them out, making sure that they don't get a chance to use their ungodly replenishment and rebuilding capacity that the AI gets to turn around and just keep hitting you over and over again. And of course, just to illustrate how absolutely terrible the SKAVEN are in auto-resolve, when I try to mop up, I actually have to fight this battle manually, because even though they only have a tiny fraction of units of what we have, and most of their units are already very badly depleted, yeah, we still only get a Pyrrhic victory in auto-resolve, and it would cause us massive casualties. So, yep, once again, going to have to fight it manually. It's okay. A little bit time-consuming, a little bit frustrating, but this is just what happens when you're bringing very inferior troops like the the pus bags into battle against the much stronger Lizardmen. All you can really do is use what your one advantage is in the early going, which is numbers, and just eventually wear them down. But it's okay. At this point, things are looking pretty good. We've won a major victory against Itza in the north. We've won a major victory against Sotek in the south. And we've even forced our Southern Sentinels enemy to peace out with us and pay us money in the process. So at this point, I'm still feeling pretty good about things. And this is really where I start to notice the new dynamic that having the stronger, more interesting Clan Pestilence factions adds to this campaign, because we've weakened Itza and now we get to see the bubonic court start to terrorize Itza territory and start to take the offensive against them, which is great because it means that's something that we don't have to do. We can let our military ally here, this is of course Archplague Lord Nurglich. I guess he's not technically even our ally. I guess technically we're subservient to him. But anyway, for purposes of this campaign, we're just going to call him our ally. Anyway, he's actually starting to threaten Itza territory himself. And like I said, that's good for us. That takes some of the pressure off of us in the north and allows us to focus a little bit more on the south. Okay, so with our victories over Itza and over Sotek, and with the bubonic court starting to invade their territory, everything is going just swimmingly in this campaign, even if it's quite a bit different than a normal Warhammer 3 campaign where we don't have all the agency ourselves. We're not solely responsible for everything that's happening down here, but instead we're actually relying on our allies to do something significant in terms of this cooperative war that we're fighting against the Lizardmen. And that's really kind of the dynamic that I liked so much about this campaign, was this really felt like not Skrulk against everyone, but it felt like Lizardmen versus SKAVEN, where there's multiple factions on each of those two sides that have sort of teamed up together and are fighting this massive war all over Lustria. We can see that teamwork continues as Bubonic Court here does in fact take Quetzal? I'm going to go with Quetzal. And so putting even more pressure up there on Itza, it's okay. I'm a little bit jealous that they got the territory instead of us, but it's okay. It's still good for us. Good on them. And in fact, I was a little bit worried that they would stop at that point and pull back or something. How many times have we seen the AI do that? But no, in this case, they continue to push the offensive, and they're actually all the way up here now threatening, and then they take Itza itself. So this is crippling for Gorok. He's in some serious trouble because he's now lost his capital to our military ally. How often have you seen that happen in a regular vanilla campaign? I don't think I've ever seen it happen. Meanwhile, we're down here in the south and we're raiding Tehinowen's territory and also trying to lay an ambush, trying to pull him out of his capital to fight against that raiding army so that we can wipe out his army and launch our own offensive down in the south. And thankfully he does fall for it, so he comes up here and we catch him in the ambush, lose a few units in the process, but the important thing is we have done some significant damage now to Tehinowen. He retreats back to the safety of his own capital, but at this point he's so badly weakened, we are able to push down there and attack and take his capital for ourselves. So this is sort of this is a significant victory. We've taken a lot of casualties in the process, but this is sort of the high watermark for us in the early campaign, because at this point things are going to stop going quite so swimmingly. And that's because before we have a chance to continue the offensive against Tehinowen, Southern Sentinels decides to declare war on us again. Like I said before, this is why I hated to peace out with them, because you give them a little bit of time and they do this. They rebuild their armies. They turn around, declare war on you again. And if you're in any situation like I'm in right here, I've come over and taken Chupa Yodel, but I'm not in good position at this point to be able to hang on to it. I tried to lay an ambush here. We'll do the best that we can to hang on to our gains, but it's going to be bad because if they attack us with these armies that now have dinosaurs in them, we're going to be really in a difficult situation. And sure enough, that's exactly what happens. At least the ambush part here works. But as you can see, all the resolve thinks we lose this fight. Well, I think we can win it, and certainly this is my best chance to win a battle against the lizard men. So I'd better take it while I've got it. I do at least have the benefit of the settlement garrison and the emergency army that I recruited, as well with the one regiment of renown that I was able to get into that army. So this is the best that I could possibly hope for, and even still, the game thinks this is going to be a defeat for us. Well, we'll go ahead and fight it. Again, it's another really ugly battle, just like they tend to be when you're talking about early game SKAVEN against lizard men. But we do have the strength in numbers. I really tried to focus on their infantry units and just kind of distract the dinosaurs as much as possible, get them bogged down in fights while we're trying to finish off everybody else. Ultimately, we do wear them down to the point where finally, eventually, even the dinosaurs themselves break and run away. Not exactly how CLANS would do it. I'm sure their ambushes would be a lot prettier than this and a lot less time-consuming than this. But hey, you know what? Skrulk with a bunch of pus bags, this is the best that we could do. And it is still a victory, and that's the important thing, except, yeah, it's a very temporary victory. Yes, we beat this army, we do massive damage to it, but all that happens is exactly what I was worried about. The Southern Sentinels do have a whole nother army here, again with dinosaurs in it, that just moves right on up here and puts us in a position now where we're fighting two lizardmen armies. Same turn, so we haven't had a chance to replenish at all. And at this point, I have to recognize what is going to be an unwinnable battle, and I decide to retreat. I actually had to cross my fingers and hope that they didn't have enough movement left to be able to attack us after the retreat, and thankfully they don't. So what it means is we're going to end up giving up Chupayodel, but at least our armies should hopefully be able to survive. And so here we are. I do run away like, SKAVEN are wont to do. I channel my inner SKAVEN self and abandon this settlement, and sure enough, they come up here and they take it. That's kind of what we knew was going to happen at this point. It's not the worst thing in the world. It's not part of our core province, but it still kind of sucks to have lost one of our settlements after I did think that things were going pretty well. But you know what? This is what ends up happening when you're fighting multiple lizardmen factions at the same time, and this is always the struggle with a Lord Skrulk campaign. Unfortunately, the embarrassment doesn't end there, because what ends up happening is Luther Harkon comes down and invades our territory from the north. He hasn't declared war on us, but he's moved his main army right up next to our capital city, and he's pretty obvious. He hates us. He's taken care of his other enemies up there. It's pretty obvious that he's about to attack us. So I have to pull Lord Skrulk up here to help defend Oixel, and actually to get some type of a preemptive strike in on Luther Harkon before he causes too much trouble. And I was hoping it wasn't the case, but the Southern Sentinels did have another army close enough to be able to take advantage of the fact that we had removed Lord Skrulk from the southern front, and he's able to come up here and attack the Sentinel of Time. This is the very first settlement that we took in this campaign, so yeah, not great. We've now lost 2 of our settlements, and we still have this quite strong army here that's now in our home province that we're going to have to figure something out against. The good news is we do have Luther Harkon here in a situation that's very advantageous to us. We are able to call our allies in on this war as well. So as you can see, Luther Harkon strength rank 12, and he hates us. We have no choice at this point. We have to deal with him. We need to at least weaken him, and we've got him in a really opportune situation for us. So we are at least able to eliminate his army here, and at this point, having weakened him, having knocked out 2 of his armies up here in the north. I think I can safely say the situation has stabilized. We've got Lord Skrulk built up. His army's not super strong, but at least he himself and the characters in his army have leveled up quite a bit. We've got some not absolutely terrible SKAVEN armies that are still maintaining most of their military strength, and we do have the obvious advantage of being SKAVEN and being able to lay lots of ambushes. So the situation at this point in the campaign is really, really interesting and still quite competitive, even though we're sitting here on, what, turn 27. This is still the heart of what I would call the early game, because like I said before, I would consider early game to not be over until you've eliminated all of your lizardmen neighbors, and at this point only Gorok has been eliminated. We still have Tehinoin to deal with, and although we have taken his capital, so he's very much weakened, and we have the minor lizardmen faction, the Southern Sentinels, that we still have to deal with, but I feel like we're in pretty good shape moving forward. I think I'm going to be able to retake the territory that we just lost from the Southern Sentinels, and at this point I think we're going to be strong enough in the fact that we don't have to worry too much about our northern front right now because the bubonic court is doing so well. I think we're going to be able to focus everything in the south and knock out the Southern Sentinels, finish off Tehinoin, but I'm going to kind of leave this one right here on that as a cliffhanger. I'm actually going to play out the rest of this campaign, and who knows if it's interesting, and if this video does at all well, I may go ahead and release that as well to show you whether or not I'm able to come back. I shouldn't say it that way. I should say whether or not Skrulk is able to turn his fortunes around and still end up becoming the dominant power of Lustria in this campaign, which is, again, something I think I have a reasonably good chance of doing, but it's competitive enough, it's questionable enough that I'm finding this campaign to still be very fascinating, which is not something you get all the time in Warhammer campaigns. A lot of times, by turn 27, you already have a pretty good sense of how this campaign is going to go, or how the campaign is going to go. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and leave this video there, but I've shown some of what this mod does. I've talked about some of the other mods that I think go well with it. So yeah, I highly recommend that people try this. And not just the Skrull campaign, which this is definitely a step up from your regular vanilla Skrull campaign, but also there are some, just for some diversity, there are some other minor SKAVEN factions here that are probably going to be worth playing as well. So please do check those out as well. If you've already got some experience with this particular mod, maybe playing some of these minor SKAVEN faction, maybe I did something in this campaign that was pretty obtuse and you have some good strategy suggestions for me or something like that, please feel free to leave any of those comments down below. Give a like if this is the kind of content that you appreciate. I'm still kind of trying out different ideas here with different videos, different types of videos to make on the channel. So I do always appreciate the feedback on which ones people like and which ones people are kind of lukewarm on. So with that, I'll go ahead and leave it there. But thanks everybody so much for watching and listening, and I will see you all in the next video.